Imagine your job comes with anti-terrorism training and a gag order that outlives the job itself. We all have the image of the high-end nanny, Mary Poppins, Sound of Music, private jets, 5-star hotels, Gucci gift bags, and we think, dream job, 6 figures to play with a cute baby in a mansion. But after digging through the contracts, the lawsuits, and the leaked tell-alls from the ultra-high net worth staff world, it's not a dream, it's a golden cage. Because when you work for a billionaire, you're not help, you're a hybrid of surrogate parent, security liability, and invisible servant. Look, the money is incredible, the perks are insane, but the rules are security grade. So, here are 8 strict rules the 0.01% force their nannies to follow, and what happens if you break them. Rule 1. There is no off the clock. You're on call 24/7, no clean shifts. In many of these roles you're live-in, which means your free time is just time the house hasn't used yet. You sleep with a baby monitor next to your head. If the child wakes up at 3 a.m, you wake up at 3 a.m, because even your sleep is considered part of the service, and your calendar isn't really yours. If Aspen happens, you don't get notice. You get a plan you're not allowed to decline. By morning you're packed, polished, and pretending this was always the plan. Your phone stays on loud, your passport lives next to the baby wipes, your suitcase is never fully unpacked because unpacking implies you have a life worth unpacking into. Dinner with friends becomes if nothing comes up, which is billionaire speak for cancelled. Birthdays become a text you send from a chauffeured car. Weekends become a myth other people enjoy. Even sleep feels conditional, temporary, revocable, and subject to immediate termination. On paper, it's luxury travel and chef-made meals. In practice, you're not living in the mansion, you're stored in it. And that's just the scheduling. The next rule is about something worse, your existence. Rule 2. You don't exist. In the corporate world, an NDA protects trade secrets. In the billionaire world, it protects the illusion. Names, locations, routines, photos, even casual dinner table details that remind the public they're human. They call it the ghost clause, and it starts before you're hired. The vetting is intense, background checks, reference calls, social audits, because you're not joining a household, you're entering a security perimeter as a managed risk. And once you're inside, silence isn't etiquette, it's the job. No posting, no tagging, no guess where I am selfies. Some nannies say they couldn't even save their parents' numbers under real names, only code names, because even your phone is treated like a leak waiting to happen. And if you slip, if you post a photo where something identifiable appears in the background, you're not just fired, you're in breach, and breach is expensive. So you become a vault with a heartbeat. You see the arguments, the breakdowns, the unfiltered mess behind the polished brand, and you learn quickly. Your role isn't just childcare, it's containment, because in that house, privacy isn't a right, it's an asset, and you're the lock. If rule 2 is you don't exist, rule 3 is worse, because now they want control over who the child loves. In certain celebrity and ultra-wealthy households, the mother is away constantly, filming, touring, traveling, and the fear isn't just tabloids, it's attachment. The nightmare isn't paparazzi, it's the child preferring the person who actually shows up. So the rules get uncanny. Some nannies say they were required to wear the mother's perfume every day, same scent, same signature. So the baby associates comfort with mom, even when mom is thousands of miles away. You become a biological stand-in, warmth, routine, soothing, wrapped in someone else's branding. And then there's the look. Because this isn't a household, it's an image. You're not allowed to look too glamorous, no flashy jewelry shows up in contracts. Makeup can be policed if it pulls focus, but you're also not allowed to look messy because you're part of the aesthetic. It's an impossible target, polished enough to fit the set, plain enough to disappear in it. They whisper a rule that explains everything. Don't outshine the woman of the house. Not because it's fair, because it's a liability. Too attractive and you're a threat. Too ordinary and you're bad for the brand. So you're hired to be present and punished for being seen. And once you're a risk to the brand, the next step is simple. Treat you like a risk to the body. Rule 4. The biohazard protocol. In some ultra-wealthy homes, the outside world isn't just inconvenient, it's contaminated. And that paranoia becomes policy. Nannies describe routines that feel like entering a clean room. Before stepping into the nursery, you strip, shower, and change into house scrubs that never leave the property. Like you're not walking into a bedroom, you're entering a sterile lab. The rules can get surreal. One nanny wrote online that tap water was forbidden for baby baths, only bottled water. Imagine the logistics of heating bottle after bottle just to wash an infant. Another family allegedly banned garlic and onions entirely, not for the child, but because the father didn't want the smell lingering in the air. At a certain point, you stop being treated like a human employee and start being treated like equipment, something that has to be sanitized before it's allowed near the air. And once they've decided you're a contamination risk, the next escalation is obvious. You're also a security risk. Rule 5. You must be security trained. Once they've decided you're a biohazard, the escalation is obvious. You're also a security problem. Because if you're working for royalty, oligarchs, or anyone truly high profile, the biggest threat isn't a dirty diaper, it's a kidnapping attempt, a stalker, a security incident that turns your childcare job into an extraction mission. Enter Norland, the elite nanny school in Bath, famous for the uniform and for producing nannies treated like a status symbol. The training is intense. Childcare, yes, but also risk awareness, defensive protocols, and security discipline. Because these families don't just want a nanny, they want a nanny who understands threat. So when you see a high-end nanny pushing a stroller through a park, you're not just looking at childcare, you're looking at the last layer between a high-value asset and the outside world. But even if you're trained, you still have to follow the oldest rule in Billionaire service: never be seen. Rule 6. The paparazzi drill. Now, even if you're trained, you still have to follow the oldest rule in Billionaire service: never be seen. Have you noticed that in photos of celebrities with their kids, you rarely see the nanny? That isn't luck, it's design. Some nannies describe being trained in a simple method. You don't walk beside the employer, you stay a few steps behind, off to the side, hands full of the practical stuff. And if cameras swarm, your job isn't to help, your job is to disappear, drop back, duck out, get out of the frame. Because the public narrative is part of the asset. The brand is she does it all. The moment a nanny is visible, holding the bag, steadying the stroller, doing the real work, the fantasy cracks. And there are stories of nannies getting blamed, even fired, for ending up in the shot and making it look like co-parenting. So that's the requirement. You must be essential to the child's life and invisible to the world. And that invisibility doesn't stop at photos. It becomes psychological, because the next rule is about power. Rule 7. The yes man. You're raising the children of the most powerful people on earth. The kids know they're rich, and when parents are busy or absent, guilt turns into permission. Discipline becomes negative energy. Boundaries become bad vibes. In some households, nannies describe an unspoken rule. You don't say no, you redirect like the word no is a PR problem. One nanny told a story about an 8-year-old throwing steak at the wall if it wasn't cooked right, and she wasn't allowed to scold him. Another described a 7-year-old who demanded to be carried everywhere, and the nanny injured her back trying to keep the peace, because the parents didn't want noise, tears, or conflict. That's the trap. You're the adult, but you have no authority. You're expected to provide structure while being denied the one tool structure requires: consequences. So you end up serving a toddler tyrant in a designer bedroom, smiling through it, absorbing the chaos, and quietly teaching a future empire owner the most dangerous lesson of all: that the world exists to accommodate them. And after all that, you'd think the worst part is the job. It isn't. The worst part is what happens when you try to leave. Rule 8. You don't get to leave clean. And finally, this is the one nobody talks about until it happens. The biggest rule in billionaire nannying isn't the schedule or the hygiene or the discipline. It's that you don't get a normal ending. You don't move on. You don't just quit and become a person again. Because the exit is where the real control sits. Contracts, penalties, threats of litigation, clauses designed to make sure your silence outlives your employment. You can be fired in a day, but your obligation to shut up can last for years, sometimes forever. And that changes the psychology of everything. It means every moment you spend in that house is logged in your own mind as something you'll never be allowed to say out loud. You can witness arguments, affairs, breakdowns, things that would ruin careers and marriages, and your only legal option is to swallow it and keep smiling. Even after you leave, you still flinch when someone asks, "So what was it like?" Because the job doesn't end when you walk out the door, it follows you. That's the final trap. The job doesn't just buy your labor, it buys your memory. So why do they do it? Well, the money is real, serious six figures, housing covered, travel covered, living costs erased. You can stack savings fast if you don't crack first. But the trade is your freedom, because these nannies aren't help. They're shadow staff. They raise their heirs, keep the secrets, protect the assets, and absorb the chaos so the brand stays clean. Burnout isn't a possibility, it's the business model. At first, it feels like you've made it. Chef-prepared meals, luxury travel, living in a palace. Then you notice the trade. You're surrounded by comfort and completely alone, because the job didn't just hire your time, it bought your silence. And remember, silence is golden until you realize it's also a lock. Now, if you want part 2, contracts, exit traps, and what happens after you quit, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.